Okay, hi family. This is some long overdue videos I've been wanting to make since this one in particular has been more than a year. So I'm just going to jump right into it without further ado and deliver the first in the installment of an event that's held in Austin, Texas every year, and it's called South by Southwest. So anyhow, let me just jump right into it. I think if you want to do some researching about it's called SXSW. That's the name of the event. So I well, first of all, I tried to buy a ticket to get into the event. I was able to get a new passport because my other passport had been on a no-fly list and I had been stuck in Mexico. So I got a new passport and I was able to use it one time to go back to the States. And among other things I was doing there was I decided to stop in on this SXSW event. And this would have been, I want to say it was in March, and they specifically held the main events during what I like to call the Ides of March. So I won't talk about the Ides of March right now, but it was, let's just say, a pretty intense time that I was there. So the first, and look at, I went through their whole, what do you call, I don't know, agenda of all the different presentations and the speakers, and I made my own little curated list here of all the things that I wanted to attend because I was interested in speaking publicly with some of these officials that were in attendance. There were pretty much all the alphabet agencies in attendance there, to include foreign agents, members, delegates from different parts of the UN and the central banks and big tech. And yeah, it was kind of like a Bilderberg group, but for the masses, right? So I thought, well, why not take the opportunity to just pop into some of these events, and I'll raise my hand and politely make a few suggestions and or ask some questions rather of the speakers and see how well their presentation lines up with their actual stated objectives. Okay, so that's the intention here, why I put this list together. So the first item on the list, I'm going to just read right off of my schedule here. It says it was held on the 10th of March at the Riley Building on Lavaca Street in Austin, Texas. The subject matter was China, national security, and the ICTS supply chain. Now, ICTS means information and communications technology, which is a piece of the smart grid, secret military arranged radar technology grid. And this smart grid is itself a piece of a larger, war plan called total spectrum dominance. So, anyhow, big subjects, right? Okay, let me say that again. China, national security, and the ICTS supply chain. Now, the sort of a teaser to what the position of the speaker was taking, or at least putting out there for a subject to discuss, was as follows. The United States wants China out of the ICTS supply chain and has taken steps to do so. Export controls, import prohibitions, and restrictions on doing business with individual companies as some examples. These rules affect semiconductors, drones, and connected vehicles, and AI engineers around the world. What might be coming next, they say, is the rhetorical question for debate. And it specifically narrows it down and says, is there a better way to counteract national security threats? How can we best respond to a constantly changing regulatory landscape? Okay, you see already, they would not sell me a ticket. When I went to the desk to get a ticket to attend these events, they refused to sell me a ticket. So I just went to the locations without my ticket, and I came in as, just a random, hey, I'm here to have a drink in the restaurant or something like that. But I actually went into the briefing room, and I found, see if I have this right, I remember there was a delegate from the United Nations, or was it, no, it was the EU. There was a delegate there from the EU. There was, and that's just the ones that made themselves publicly known. There were quite a few who were there in covert, let's just say. Like handlers and bodyguards and guys, that were taking note of who got up and asked what kind of questions and these kinds of things. It was super, super creepy. But I went in there anyway, and I said, yes. And of course, then I had my hand raised. That was the other thing. And this guy that was on the stage, the last speaker, was working for the Department of State, and I had my hand raised for it. It felt like forever. It was long enough I had to switch hands and put the other hand up, and they just kept like I wasn't even in the room. So finally, as he was excusing himself to get off the stage, I raised my hand a little higher and I said, "Excuse me, sir, before you go, I would like to, address these questions that you posed here. So here we are. Are we ready for this?" And I couldn't get one sentence out. I had only just begun, and they basically shut me down, and they escorted this guy off of this speaker's podium, where he was, had been standing. You could see the guy was just like, he was completely flustered. He didn't know how to respond to my suggestions about, is there a better way to counteract national security threats? So he got really nervous, and the handlers basically said, "Oh, no, he's got to go because he's late for a meeting," or something like this. He had another speaking engagement that they had to scurry him off the stage. And I was like, well, I'll talk to any one of the panel members. I think there was like 4 or 5 panel members. I said, you can bring any one of them up here, whichever is their field of expertise, and we can have these discussions vis-a-vis national security threats. Wouldn't do that either. So then I sort of, then the guy said before he got off the stage, "Okay, everybody, we're going to have a gathering. We're going to move the gathering downstairs into the bar where you can buy a $25 glass of lemonade." I'm not kidding. It was horrible, the price gouging there. And we can do like a social mixer down there, and you can ask questions that, are off the, the public, just one-on-one. I said, "All right, I'll meet you guys downstairs. Let's go." But then as soon as I turned to go downstairs, I saw him trying to slip out this side door. And I said, "Hey, sir, where are you going? You just invited us and the public to come downstairs to talk about these questions that you're posing in your agenda. And I have some very important things to share in this regard, and I would appreciate 5 minutes of your time for you to know these kinds of things, right? And I would like to hear your feedback on these kinds of things." So he wouldn't go downstairs into the bar. And then his wife came up, and I won't go into details about her, but she was definitely a handler in the esoteric sense, I'm not saying she was on anybody's payroll to be a handler, but in the esoteric sense, she was very much a handler because she likes her nice house. She likes her diplomatic passport. She likes her 24/7 armed guard security on the premises. She likes the fact that the big ass house she's living in has been paid for by the State Department, and allowing them to take their measly 6-figure salaries and benefits and pocket them all directly, and everything is duty free because I have a diplomatic passport, right? And she likes to go and get her hair and nails done every week, and she likes to go to the shopping mall and spend until you drop. You know what I'm saying? So she's not going, and her husband is the venue to make all those things happen. So she doesn't want anything or anyone to cause him to question what it is he does for a living, because she doesn't want to give up her things. That's what I mean about the wife. So let me then just go ahead and get right to it and say what I was the State Department guy did not want to discuss, and kept dodging me. If his handler wasn't in the way, his wife was in the way, and then they put a bodyguard in the way. So you're full of shit then, right then and there, you're full of shit. Because if you're having a conference and you're getting on the stage and you're claiming to know that these are the subject that you are well versed in and trained in, and or this is what you do for a living, and you're putting this out there to the public to get their feedback, I presume, because you're asking questions. Is there a better way? So you're full of shit right there, right? I'm just saying. So then I found I did a scan of the room once I realized they weren't going to let me anywhere near the State Department guy. I did a scan of the room, and I found one other woman who was a delegate from the EU, and I recognized her as having been up on the stage, and she had people all surrounding her, and and I just waited my time. I stood there probably 10 minutes waiting to talk to her, and then I said to her, "Ma'am, I realize you're going to have to go because we got to clear out this room. There's another speaker coming in. Please, I'd like to, here comes the rain, boy." I said, "I would like to have a word, if you don't mind." And I asked her, I said, specifically, what is your field of expertise? Are you into the ICTS? Are you into the economy? What's your field that you represent? So if you're coming from the EU, I presume it's regulatory, regional, world government kind of top-down control. I didn't say that, but so I said, I'd like to talk about these things that pose the national and international security threats. Since you're from the EU, then that means you live in Europe. So this is not just a national security threat domestically here in the United States, but this is an international. And I said, so I'll just get right to the point and let you know who the real national and international security threat is. And that is the central banks with their debt-based fiat currency. And as that ties into the ICTS, now that they're all kind of shrinking back, and the rats are throwing each other off the ship, and all the banks are closing, and the CEOs are stepping down, and this and that and the other, the central bankers are sort of consolidating power, if you will. And what they're doing in that case is just turning everything over to artificial intelligence, and every interaction that every consumer, business owner, client, card holder has with a bank is all being outsourced to third-party AI apps on their cell phones, which is highly unsecure. And I went on to explain things from a communications perspective about the VoIP technology. And then I said, but the bottom line is the banks are the threat, because if a central bank controls my nation's money supply, then it controls the nation, and therefore is a foreign agent that is having control over a nation, and that makes it a domestic terrorist threat. And likewise, you could apply that scenario across the international realm as well. And of course, I don't want to say of course, but I was really hoping I could find one thing that we could explore, as she really wants to answer these questions that have been posed. I said that's the best way to counter a national security threat or an international security threat, is to go directly to the source and stop identifying the things that spring up out of it. That's what I basically said. So she did not know anything about she didn't know nothing about money, where it comes from. She didn't have any expertise on any of the subject matter that's on her agenda. She didn't have no knowledge in none of it. She was just given a script and a first-class ticket back to the United States to attend this conference and be part of the puppets that were sitting up in there promoting this communist agenda. Like I said, I had to sneak into this. This thing started at 2:30 in the afternoon, so I had gone to get my ticket at noon, and then I had a 15-30 minute walk to the place, so I had plenty of time to spare. But by the time I sat around waiting for a supervisor after supervisor after supervisor at the ticket booth to explain to me why I couldn't buy a ticket, I had cut into that time. So by the time I got to the Riley building for this first event, the speakers had already gone off of this stage, pretty much all the preceding. There was just the last guy on the stage. And I had some other functions to attend after that, but I just didn't even bother at that point, because at that point I felt like just my presence there was enough, and then I'm gonna like just sprinkle that fairy dust just to say, no, communists, you will not take over with your ICTS in the United States. You won't. Now, of course, they're trying to do that, but it's all going to come down. Whatever, the efforts are futile. Whatever infrastructure is put up will be torn down. Whatever data center is built will be dismantled and destroyed. And that's just the facts. So, yeah, I just wanted to go on and say a little bit more about this first meeting or event, they called it, is the rules about semiconductors, drones, connected vehicles. They are letting you know. They are letting you know in the agenda, if you're paying attention, all your electric vehicles, or even if they're gasoline vehicles, as long as they're connected in your car and you have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in your car, and the computer, how do you say, the way that the car itself is made is for the purpose of being tracked. That's what those antennas are for on the back. It's not for the convenience of your GPS. Not for you to use your GPS maps. It may work in that regard, but only if you realize that the first intention is to connect the vehicles onto the artificial intelligence grid. AI engineers around the world. Okay, let me just say something about AI engineers. That is another play on words, because if you read that just as it is, you might think, oh, it's a guy or a gal who went to university and got his engineering in whatever degree, right? He got that, he's now working in AI. No. AI engineers means to say that the artificial intelligence is the engineer. Let me say that again. the inferior, black or white, yes or no, ones and zeros, on or off, if this, then that, and nothing else, right? That's what artificial intelligence is. It's inferior and very prone to error. So what they're saying is that they're letting you know that China is going to, with its trade and economic sanctions against the United States, is going to say you are forced. I'm forcing these into your economy, and the people will have no other choice but to purchase these things. Now, you may not know who made your semiconductor, or what your, drone, maybe what country it was made in. But if you can see vehicles on the road and they're made in China, and you know that brand is made in China, then you're there. So export controls and import prohibitions. Well, I just don't know what to say about that, because if everybody just used hemp and mycelium to make its own ICTS, then we wouldn't need to export or import anything. Every country could manufacture its own ICTS without having to import or export anything. I mean, that's what I would say about rules affecting, the ICTS. That would be my first recommendation to the board, or to the whoever the people were on stage. And knowing that the way these control systems work is that one country says, no, this is all my data that they've been collecting on all of us for several decades, and all the, it's mine, and I'm not going to share it with another country. I'm not going to have an agreement to share that with another company, or another corporation, aka country. And there's a reason for that, of course, right? But I would just back up and say, do I need to import? Sure, it might be cheaper, but what's it made of? What if I'm a regulatory official, and I was the expert matter in this area, and I would say that all I need to do is watch a movie called The Minority Report to see how that pans out. And I would say no. That we should actually have import prohibitions. But having said that, what are the regulators at the end of the day? They'll write anything they want to, because the industry is paying them to write it. It just basically means to say that they'll put regulations in place that make Chinese ICTS more affordable than buying something that's made in the United States. So, and that's another point back, again, that's a circling back to the national security, which is the hot word in that sentence of their agenda, is the national security, because if you want to address these national security threats, then you need to establish borders. You need to establish healthy boundaries, and you need to establish a sovereign currency. So that's what we can do if we are very serious about national security. That's what I would say to do. That's what I wanted to say. That's what I wanted to spit out. So I'm going to spit it out anyway, right? And I'm going to go down the list as well. So thanks for watching, family. Hope this has been informative to you. Stay tuned for the next. Ciao for now.